Welcome to The Debate. History, as we often experience it, is a noisy affair. It's a cacophony of sudden wars, market crashes, political revolutions. But there is another kind of history, one that is written not in the screaming headlines, but in the quiet, almost imperceptible shifts of tectonic plates. These are the moments that don't just inform us, they confront us. They act as a mirror, holding up a reflection to nations that reveals the stark and often unforgiving reality of their trajectory. Today, we are peering into one such mirror. We're dissecting the shifting geometry of power in the Gulf and South Asia and the profound, perhaps existential crisis of relevance this poses for Pakistan.
And when we speak of a crisis of relevance, we have to be careful not to understate the gravity of the situation. We are not discussing a mere diplomatic cold shoulder or some temporary fluctuation in foreign aid. We are witnessing the dismantling of a geopolitical architecture that has defined the region for, nearly half a century. We are observing a world where the old currencies of statecraft, religious affinity, historical brotherhood, sentimental gratitude, are being ruthlessly demonetized, all in favor of a cold, hard, and unyielding economic realism.
It's a harsh assessment, but it's one that is absolutely essential to make. Our guide through this labyrinth of shifting alliances is the formidable and incisive essay titled The Mirror of Power, Pakistan and the Global Shift by the writer Sami-Ullah Malik. And it's a text that possesses a rare quality. It combines geopolitical foresight with a deep, almost mournful patriotism. It demands that we look not just at what is happening to Pakistan, but why Pakistan has permitted it to happen. So the central tension we have to resolve today is this. Has Pakistan become obsolete in the eyes of the Gulf because it clings to an emotional history of brotherhood, while the Gulf states, specifically the UAE and Saudi Arabia, have accelerated into a realist future defined strictly by economic self-interest?
That is the indictment that Sami-Ullah Malik places before us. However, while I accept the premise of Pakistan's stagnation, I would argue that the Gulf itself is no longer the monolith we once understood it to be. The board hasn't just changed, it has fractured. We're not merely watching Pakistan stand still, we're watching it get caught in the widening chasm between the ambitions of Riyadh and the established dominance of Abu Dhabi.
I anticipate we will disagree on the extent to which external factors can excuse internal paralysis. I take the position, and it's strongly supported by Sami-Ullah Malik's analysis, that Pakistan is suffering from a catastrophic failure of adaptation. The state appears to be sleepwalking through a burning house, clutching the receipts of past sacrifices, unaware that the global market now trades only in future utility. But look, let's ground this high-level abstraction in the specific evidence.
Yes, we must look at the catalyst.
Malik identifies a specific moment of reckoning. It was not a declaration of war, not a violent coup. It was a diplomatic visit. I'm referring to the recent visit of UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed to India. In the theater of diplomacy, time is the ultimate signal. Consider the optics. The visit lasted a mere 1 hour and 45 minutes.
Which, to the uninitiated, might seem like a snub. In the traditional leisurely pace of Eastern diplomacy, a state visit is a multi-day affair of banquets, cultural exchanges, and so on.
Precisely. But Malik argues, and I think compellingly, that this brevity was not an insult. It was a demonstration of extreme efficiency. It was the unveiling of a strategic choice that had been calibrated over years. In those 105 minutes, we didn't see the exchange of pleasantries. We saw the confirmation of a trade expansion from $100 billion to $200 billion. We saw the solidification of cooperation in artificial intelligence, space exploration, and nuclear energy. This was not a meeting about the past. It was a meeting about the architectural design of the future.
I can't dispute the sheer gravitational pull of those numbers. $200 billion is not just a statistic. It's a geopolitical anchor. It binds the destiny of the UAE to the rise of India.
And that is the core of my argument. The UAE has looked at India and seen a partner for the 21st century. They see a market, a technological hub, and a safe harbor for capital. Now turn that mirror back on Pakistan. What does this pivot say? It says that the era of friendships is dead. In the Gulf, as Sami-Ullah Malik writes with such piercing clarity, friendships are not permanent, interests are. Pakistan has failed to internalize this lesson, operating under the delusion that shared religion or the memory of past defense cooperation is, well, sufficient to maintain its standing.
You present this as the UAE's simply choosing the superior economic partner. But we have to look at the fracture within the Gulf to understand the urgency of this choice. Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates are no longer, to use Malik's phrasing, pillars of the same tent.
So you're suggesting that Abu Dhabi's embrace of New Delhi is a signal sent as much to Riyadh as it is to the rest of the world?
Without question. Sami'ullah Malik offers a very nuanced reading of the Saudi psyche here. You see, Riyadh still views itself as the natural leader of the Islamic world, a claim rooted in demography, geography, the custodianship of the two holy mosques. The UAE, conversely, derives its legitimacy not from history, but from modernity, from logistics, finance, the success of the Dubai model. And these two models are now in direct existential competition.
Competition for capital, certainly. But does that explain the total marginalization of Pakistan?
It explains the context of that marginalization. Saudi Arabia views the UAE's economic dominance as a threat to its own Vision 2030. The UAE, in turn, recognizes the need to diversify its alliances to escape the, shadowing bulk of its larger neighbor. So by pivoting to India, Abu Dhabi is creating a strategic counterweight. Pakistan isn't just being ignored because of its economic frailty. It's being sidelined because it has nothing to offer in this high-stakes rivalry between the Gulf's two titans. Pakistan is trying to be a brother to a family that is currently dividing its assets and fencing off its borders.
That is a sophisticated structural analysis. And yet, I feel it lets the Pakistani state off the hook too easily. Even if the Gulf is fracturing, the response from Pakistan has been inept. Let's examine the first core area of our debate, the economics of destiny versus the trap of security.
A vital distinction.
Sami'ullah Malik draws a painful, almost visceral contrast in the essay. When the UAE president visits India, he lands in the capital to sign trade deals about the digital economy. But when he visits Pakistan, he doesn't go to the civilian seat of government. He visits the military cantonment.
It's a stark symbol. It creates a visual narrative that is impossible to ignore.
It is more than a symbol. It's a diagnosis. It signals that the relationship is purely security-centric. Pakistan is viewed not as a nation-state with which to trade, but as a mercenary force, a provider of biological assets for defense, training, and security. We offer the capacity to fight. India offers the capacity to build. And the tragedy, as illuminated by Malik, is that Pakistan seems content with this arrangement. We offer defense, yet we receive no technology transfer, no industrial integration. We remain the guard at the gate, while the merchants inside sign the contracts that define the century.
I have to push back on the idea that this is purely a failure of ambition. We must be realistic about the assets Pakistan holds. Security is a commodity, and in a volatile region, it is a valuable one. As the essay notes, Pakistan remains the only Muslim nuclear power. That is not a trivial card to hold in a game of survival. Saudi Arabia, in particular, still requires Pakistan as a strategic guarantor and a defensive pillar. One cannot simply wave away the security architecture of the Middle East because technology stocks are performing well.
I'm not waving it away. I'm arguing that it is insufficient currency for the modern world. Malik warns us explicitly, military strength is no substitute for economic attraction. The central question of our time is not who can fight better, it's who can safeguard and multiply capital, who can integrate into global supply chains.
And therein lies the problem for Pakistan.
Indeed, you can possess the most disciplined army in the region, but if your economy is surviving on the drip feed of bailouts and debt relief, your strategic autonomy is effectively zero. The UAE knows this, Saudi Arabia knows this, and that is why the UAE goes to India for its future. India offers a destination for capital growth. Pakistan, in its current state, offers only a destination for charity.
That is a scathing assessment. Perhaps necessary, but scathing. However, let us deepen the analysis of this Gulf rift because I believe it complicates Pakistan's emotional foreign policy even further.
We discussed the economic competition, Saudi Vision 2030 versus the Dubai model, but Malik identifies a structural rift that goes deeper. It touches on ideology and the very nature of governance.
You're referring to the divergence regarding political Islam?
Yes, this is critical and often overlooked by casual observers. The UAE views the Muslim Brotherhood and, by extension, populist political Islam as an existential threat to the stability of the monarchy. This drives their hardline policies in Egypt, in Libya, across the Maghreb. They are committed to excising that ideology. Saudi Arabia, however, acts with what Malik calls strategic ambiguity. They've been more flexible, historically utilizing religious groups as tactical levers when it suits their geopolitical interests. This creates a massive ideological wedge between the two capitals.
And let us not forget the wound of Yemen.
Yemen is the graveyard of their unity. Saudi Arabia saw a unified state in a total defeat of the Houthis to secure their southern flank. The UAE, they focused almost entirely on the south, securing ports, maritime routes, and commercial footholds. They secured their economic interests and then reduced their military footprint, leaving Saudi Arabia to shoulder the heavy burden of an unwinnable war. That generated a crisis of trust between the royals that has not healed.
Which, to my mind, bolsters my argument. If the Gulf is this divided, if the UAE and Saudi Arabia are operating as rivals, then Pakistan's emotional foreign policy of brotherhood with all is dangerously naive. You cannot blindly align with the Gulf when the Gulf is at war with itself.
I concede that blind alignment is a strategic failure.
But observe the nuance Pakistan is missing. Malik points out that the UAE has pursued a quiet accommodation with Iran, reopening trade and diplomacy to protect their shipping interests. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia has historically maintained a hardline stance. Pakistan attempts to straddle these divides without any strategic clarity. We are drifting. We lack the intellectual sophistication to navigate these currents because our decision-making is opaque and reactive.
It is a fair critique. Navigating a divorce is difficult. Navigating a divorce where both parties are heavily armed and incredibly wealthy is perilous. But I want to introduce the third dimension here, the one that elevates this from a regional dilemma to a global crisis, the undeclared triad.
Yes, the global dimension. Malik writes about this with significant gravity. The alignment of the United States, Israel, and India.
This is where the pressure on Pakistan becomes overwhelming. The UAE's tilt towards India is not happening in a vacuum. It aligns perfectly with the grand strategy of the United States to contain China. The UAE has normalized relations with Israel via the Abraham Accords. It is deepening ties with India. This creates a new security architecture, an arc stretching from Tel Aviv to New Delhi, anchored by American naval power.
And Pakistan finds itself on the outside looking in.
Worse, Pakistan is being squeezed. As a close partner of China, the hub of the CPEC corridor, and with its warming ties to Russia, Pakistan is finding itself on the wrong side of this triad. The UAE and India are aligning with the status quo powers of the Western order. Pakistan is aligning with the revisionist powers. So when the UAE pivots to India, it is not just business, it is grand strategy.
That brings us back to the failure of policy. Pakistan is being squeezed, yes, but Samni Ullah Malik delivers a harsh truth here that we cannot ignore. He writes, "External pressure is effective only when internal weaknesses already exist."
It is a profound observation, echoing the sentiments of historians who note that empires usually crumble from within before they are conquered from without.
It is the crux of the matter. The triad has little interest in a resilient Pakistan because, as Malik notes, economic weakness constrains strategic autonomy. If Pakistan were economically robust, like India, it could withstand this pressure. It could maintain its autonomy. It could trade with China and the US. But because Pakistan mortgages its future for short-term debt relief, because it lives handout to handout, it is vulnerable. The external pressure works because the internal foundation is rotten.
I suppose one cannot argue with the logic that a beggar cannot be a chooser in geopolitics. If you require the IMF signature to survive the fiscal quarter, you can't exactly dictate terms to Washington or Abu Dhabi.
Precisely. India builds economic power to secure its strategic independence. Pakistan trades its strategic independence for economic survival. It is a tragedy of the highest order.
Let's pause here for a moment. The picture we're painting is bleak, but I think it's important to acknowledge the nature of the text we're discussing. Sami Ullah Malik is not writing this as a condemnation of his country, nor as a eulogy.
No, quite the opposite.
It reads as an invitation to internal accountability. It's a warning. He isn't indicting individuals so much as he is indicting a mindset. He is telling us that the currency of power has changed, and if Pakistan does not change its currency, it will go bankrupt politically and morally.
I agree completely. It's a patriotic text, in the truest sense. It speaks the hard truths that friends usually withhold. And that brings us to the internal paralysis. The essay holds up another mirror, perhaps the most painful one. Afghanistan.
A very painful reflection indeed. Consider the sheer volume of resources Pakistan poured into Afghanistan over 40 years. Decades of economic resources, security commitments, diplomatic capital, human sacrifice. We hosted millions of refugees. And what is the result today?
Influence lost, strategic depth turned into strategic encumbrance.
Total loss. Malik points out that despite all this, Afghanistan is now drawing closer to India. It's becoming a platform for New Delhi. Why? Because Pakistan's policy was flawed from the start. It was shaped, as the essay suggests, by unseen forces and mafias, rather than national interest.
That is a very strong accusation in the text, the suggestion that competent officers and bureaucrats are punished for integrity, while decision-making is hijacked by pressure groups or vested interests who profit from the chaos.
It explains the opacity. If you can't make rational decisions because you are beholden to invisible pressures, you will fail. Pakistan spent years focused on security in Afghanistan, ignoring the economic reality. Now Afghanistan wants trade, electricity, capital, so they look to India. It is the same story as the Gulf. We offer guns, others offer gold.
So what is the path of restoration? We've diagnosed the illness, economic frailty, leading to strategic irrelevance. But Malik doesn't leave us without a roadmap. He calls for the abandonment of blind alignment.
Which implies?
It implies that Pakistan must diversify its portfolio. It cannot just look to the Gulf and hope for a bailout. It must balance relations with Russia, China, Turkey, and Iran. But, and this is the key, this balance must be based on economic logic, not just defense.
Yes. The essay is clear. Strategic alignment must extend beyond defense and diplomacy to encompass long-term economic and institutional cooperation. We need to stop asking who will defend us and start asking who will trade with us, who will build factories here, who will transfer technology.
And for that to happen, the bureaucracy must be emancipated. Malik argues that the state machinery must be liberated from those invisible pressures so it can formulate policy in the national interest. Without institutional strength, no foreign policy can succeed. You cannot have a Palmerstonian foreign policy with a fractured, indecisive state.
It's a call for sovereignty, really. Not the sovereignty of flags and anthems, but the sovereignty of solvency. If you can pay your bills, you can make your own choices.
As we draw this debate to a close, it's clear that the era of sacrifice and gratitude is over. We are entering a colder, sharper world.
Indeed. The conclusion of Sami Ullah Malik's essay strikes me as particularly resonant. He argues that the divergence between Saudi Arabia and the UAE is not a passing cloud, it is the new climate. And Pakistan can no longer treat the region as a monolith.
I would add that this divergence will define the region for years. The competition between Riyadh and Abu Dhabi will shape energy markets, regional conflicts, and global alliances. Pakistan needs to be nimble enough to engage with both without becoming a vassal to either.
Not advance by asking why. They advance by preparing answers. For too long, Pakistan has asked, why does the world not appreciate our sacrifices? Why do our brothers turn away? The world doesn't care for grievances. As Malik writes, the world moves on contracts, capital, and coherence.
It is a sobering thought. We are spectators in a changing world, watching others write the history we thought we were destined to lead.
Unless the decision is made to change, unless the internal weaknesses are addressed. This analysis, based on The Mirror of Power, Pakistan and the Global Shift by Sami Ullah Malik, serves as that final warning. The mirror is held up. The reflection is difficult to bear, but only by facing it can the nation hope to change the image it sees.
Well said. A mirror can be a tool for vanity or a tool for correction. Let us hope in this case it is the latter.